Thanks, Grant. Appreciate it very much. I love that we don't just have a worship director with Grant Allen. We have a worship minister. I appreciated his word this morning very much. Let's give it up for Grant Allen. Love that man. He's our longest serving staff member. He's been on the team much longer. You worked for my predecessor for longer than for me, right? Is it about even now? Halfway now. Wow, that's pretty cool. So anyway, just grateful for Grant and the bastion of strength he's been for me as a friend and leader. But this has been a fun series. I hope you've enjoyed the Parent Trap series. We've been talking about the process of parenting, and the analogy I've been using, I've been talking about the roles of parenting: commander, coach, and consultant. And as our kids grow up, they become less and less dependent upon us, right? Their level of dependency goes down, and hopefully more dependent on Christ, right? In the beginning, our kids borrow our faith, but by the end, they're no longer dependent on us. They have become dependent on God, the Father. And our goal as parents is to hand the baton of dependence from ourselves to Jesus. And last week, we talked about how each of the roles of parenting, commander, coach, consultants, is essentially a different kind of leadership. And we learned by Jesus' example of leadership from John chapter 10. And in it, Jesus kind of lays out, these are the basics of leadership. Great leaders define the win, lead by example, take ownership, and empower with feedback. And we actually received a lot of great feedback from you guys this last week. Thank you. And I hope that the message wasn't just interesting. I hope that you actually applied some of the things that we taught this last week. And in the final week of this series, I want to talk and focus on the way a relationship between parents and children changes as kids grow up and parents grow old. And we're going to focus on specifically is this little circle right here, the consultant phase of parenting. When your kids have left the house and you're just an unpaid consultant in their life. And I'm excited about this because this really includes everybody. If you've never had kids, you've had parents in your life, and you understand what it's like for them to be in the consultant phase of your life. If you have young kids in your life right now, you probably still have parents that are alive, and so you know what that feels like. And someday, you will be a consultant to your kids, so that'll be relevant. So even if you don't have kids or whatever age or stage your kids are in, this is relevant and important to us today. And I hope that the lessons that you'll get out of this will empower you to live a better life. I think this whole message, this whole concept, everything with the consultant phase is really hinging upon one very important concept. I titled our message, The Cycle of Love and Respect. And I think that this one concept is really critical to understand. And I want to frame this entire message using a true story from the Bible about a dad and his son. The dad's name is King David, and the son's name is Absalom. And this takes place in the older part of the Bible. And what I love about David is he is a deeply flawed hero. And I love that God doesn't only use perfect people. In fact, there are no perfect people in the Bible besides Jesus. And I love that God takes imperfect people and he redeems their flaws and mistakes for our good and for his glory. And I love reading the Bible because it just reminds me that church should be a place where no one's perfect and everyone's welcome. I don't care what you did last night or where you've been. I want you to know not just me, but Jesus would say he's glad you're here. And he wants to use broken people just like me and you to do great things. And I also love that at our church, we have an authentic community. At Next Gen, our student ministry, for example, we have lots of student leaders who are flawed. And they're honest about their flaws. It's an authentic place. I grew up in a student ministry where everybody pretended to be perfect, and I thought I could never serve Jesus or be a part of the church because I have too many issues. But that's not the heart of Jesus at all. No matter what you believe, even if you don't follow Jesus, this is a real place for you to explore faith and healing and freedom, to be honest about your struggles and strengths. And especially if you don't follow Jesus today, I want you to know the teachings of Jesus will still bless your life in today's message. I mean, I think it's going to be powerful as it speaks to you. Now, particularly, David struggles in his relationships with his adult children. He's a great leader of his community, but he's a very poor husband, and he's an even worse father. Have you ever seen a family self-destruct? You know what I'm talking about. You see this family where, they grow up together, they laugh together, they live together for 18 years. But after the kids move out, things happen, and they don't even talk anymore. Like, everything just breaks down. Have you ever watched that happen? My wife's family, from the outside, was this classic all-American family. Here's my wife here. I call her Chrissy Cole, but isn't she just a cute little itty-bitty baby girl? She was wearing those glasses. Remember those glasses where the bows would connect to the bottom of the lens, and they looked like they were upside down? You're like, your glasses are on upside down. No, they're not. That's crazy. Anyway, this is her family, and from the outside, they all look great, right? It looks like a classic American family. But structurally, on the inside, there were some intrinsic problems that would lead to the complete destruction of this family. Today, almost all of the relationships in the family are strained or estranged. And it's interesting now because in hindsight, we can see what led to it. Today I want to talk about that. We know that God calls us to good family relationships. In Exodus 20, verse 12, he says, honor your father and mother, then you will live a long, full life in the land the Lord your God is giving to you. I think that the Bible actually focuses on parent-child relationships because the whole story of the Bible is a story of God the Father being reconciled to his children. I think parent and adult-child relationships are some of the most difficult relationships in American society today. Because when conflict arises, when you're kids, you live in the same house as your parents. You're going to have to resolve it. But when you grow up and you move out, things get a little bit more difficult because you can just stop talking. You can just be like, well, I'm not calling for a month. We'll see how they like that. Absalom is one of David's favorite sons. He was described in the Bible as a pretty handsome guy. My wife has always told me, John, there's this theme verse in the Bible that I really feel like describes you. It describes your character, describes your heart. And I'm just so grateful that she's picked this verse for me. It's 2 Samuel 14:25. Let me read it to you. It says, now Absalom was praised as the most handsome man in all Israel. He was flawless from head to foot. Just kidding. Kristen has never picked that verse for me. I mean, I wish she would, but this dude, Absalom, is super handsome. He's a good-looking guy. And I would describe him, I want to give you some corollaries to today. I would describe him like Chris Hemsworth, Brad Pitt, or Steve McQueen, right? I try to hit all the generations there, okay? Young, middle-aged, and older. Some of you guys are like, Brad Pitt's not middle-aged. I'm like, yeah, dude, life is happening for real, okay? Goes fast. But anyway, this dude, Absalom, he's not one of those guys that just is pretty, but there's nothing going on upstairs, okay? I mean, he's actually a pretty bright guy. He's charismatic. The Bible actually teaches us that he stole the heart of everybody that he met. Like, he would meet people he just captured. Have you ever met one of those people? They're just so winsome and charismatic. Everybody they meet just loves them, and they're not just smart, handsome, or beautiful, but they, capture hearts. My wife is this way, and I get jealous. I'm like, why is it that everybody she meets, I guess I just need to be nicer. That's what she says, at least. Anyway, the family on the outside is charmed. David and Absalom, they're royal, okay? The Bible describes David, King David, the dad, as ruddy and handsome, which means he was like warrior, like savage, beast mode handsome, not pretty boy handsome. And, they just have this great, People magazine is taking pictures. The paparazzi follows them everywhere they go, talking about who they're dating, what they're doing, anything like that. From the outside, they got great wealth, royalty, looks. It seems like it should be good, but there's some intrinsic issues in that family that would ultimately lead to its complete destruction. It was a really big deal, and all the stuff was functioning in the background, or dysfunctioning in the background, I should say. But then a tragedy all brings it up to the forefront of the whole situation. The family has this horrible thing happen. David's daughter, Absalom's sister, is brutally raped at the hands of another family relative. And this is a terrible situation. And it ends up being a big deal that breaks the camel's back and destroys a family. The assailant of the daughter ends up openly mocking the sister. And both David and Absalom are super upset about the situation, naturally. In 2 Samuel 13:21, it says, when King David heard what happened, he was very angry. And though Absalom never spoke to Amnon about this, that's the assailant, he hated Amnon, understandable, deeply because of what he had done to his sister. There's a whole bunch more to this story. It takes place in 2 Samuel 13 through 18. I'd encourage you to read it home. I'm just focusing on kind of one aspect of it. There's some components that we're not going to talk about today. But what's tragic to me in this is that both David and Absalom are grieving over this issue, but they don't connect with each other about it. They're like classic dudes. They don't talk about feelings. It's like you have so much in common. You're going through the same pain, but you can't articulate those things to each other. Instead, they just ball it up inside into dysfunction. They get grumpy and snappy with each other. They fester in it, and they begin kind of blaming each other for their problems. When Absalom was a kid, it would have been easier because Absalom lived at home, and the dad and the son would be forced to reconcile. But the implication here in the text is that Absalom is just about grown up. He's probably in his final days of living in his father's house when the tragedy happens. And shortly thereafter, he moves out. And so they can no longer resolve the issue because they don't live in the same home. And what will happen is their relationship gets completely destroyed because of this cycle called the cycle of love and respect. And I want to talk about that today because I think it'll be really insightful for you. The cycle of love and respect is something that will open your eyes to problems in your relationships, and it will equip you with the power to diffuse and fix those problems. This is one of those messages where I think God's word is just so clear and so practical and so applicable. I think it has the power to change your life. This is one of those concepts that's going to give you an aha moment. And I've been laying the foundation for this talk for the last 2 weeks. I've wanted to give you what I'm going to give you today by giving you the foundation for the last 2 weeks. You're going to want to lean in here. But the first concept I want to give you within the cycle of love and respect is that when kids become parents, their parents can become more like kids. This is really interesting. This is just a part of aging. As we get older, okay, we begin to need to be taken care of on a number of different levels. Okay? Physically, emotionally, I would say that especially physically, parents and adult kids see their physical needs be reversed. It used to be that our parents took care of us physically, but especially as our parents age, we begin to take care of them physically. I mean, my father, he's pushing 70, but, to me, my mom and dad hung the moon. My dad in particular, the dude he doesn't look as old as he is. I mean, he's cut like a Greek god underneath his shirt. He's still unreal. He's still super, super athletic and physical and whatever. But I know that one day soon, I will be taking care of him. Right? One day soon. And that's jarring. It's almost as though we don't expect it. And I've begun seeing a lot more flaws in my father, and there's two reasons for this. Number one, I think as we grow older, there's a lot of things that were just normal as a kid. You grow up and you're like, oh, that's not normal. That's weird. Like my family's weird, right? And number two, I think as our parents get older, a lot of more imperfections just begin to emerge because, we're physically more needy than they were. And this is a process that most humans go through if they don't die young, okay? I want to share with you this process. It's called the arc of life dependency. Okay, when we're young, we're very dependent, but as time goes on, we become less and less dependent upon our parents. Hopefully more dependent on Christ, but less dependent upon our parents. Our level of dependency, physical and emotional dependency on people around us, our need declines and decreases. And when we become adults and our parents are just consultants in our life, we're not very dependent on people. In fact, I think in a lot of ways, a lot of other people are dependent on us, especially when we have kids. I mean, I'm doing things today at 33 because I have children that I never thought I'd be able to do at 20. I wake up in the morning and I work all day long. I have no hobbies. I just focus on working, producing, cleaning, doing stuff. And then, I fall in bed and I repeat. And that's just part of being a parent of young children. That's what we do. We work. Everybody's depending on us. And you can't fail because life forces you to do it. It's a necessity of life. But as we grow older, things change. I mean, we have fewer people depending on us. Life gets a little easier. Our needs change. And this is really interesting. I've watched this happen with a lot of people. I mean, right now, I don't have enough time in my life. I mean, I just don't. Like, I work as hard as I can, and every day I go to bed with stuff not done that needs to get done. But I know someday, I'm going to wake up in the morning and realize I have more time than I need. I mean, that's a part of life. It'll be interesting because instead of being totally independent from my children, instead of just being givers to my children, at some point, I'm going to start to become in need of stuff from them. And this is weird when parents begin to need from kids, love, support, time, whatever. We used to give them everything, but we're going to reach this phase in our life where we need stuff from them. And it's the reverse of maturity. I want you to see, this is just the first half of the arc of life dependency. This is what it really looks like. We come into the world kicking and screaming. We're raised to a place where we have a pretty high level of independence. And then eventually we become more and more dependent. We leave life kicking and screaming the same way that we came into it. And it's odd and it's jarring because I think a lot of times we don't expect it. And that's because American sociology has a huge deficiency in this area. In Japan, in China, in the Bible, we elevate and honor aging. The Bible says gray hair is a crown of splendor. Birthdays are something to be celebrated. What do we do in America? We hide our gray hair. We hide our crown of splendor. We dye it. And we don't talk about our age. When you get older, age is something to be ashamed of. It's not something that we talk about or celebrate. I think a lot of times, because of that, as people get older and they have more needs, they become ashamed of their needs. They become insulted when people talk about their needs. There's this great old movie called Grumpy Old Men. It's a phrase that we have in our society, Grumpy Old Men. I love that movie. It takes place in Minnesota, which is my homeland. But anyway, this is my homeland now. Hello, forget Minnesota. Okay, anyway, it's not because men are old and grumpy, though. I think the reason why we have the phrase grumpy old men is because when they get older, they have a different set of needs that society doesn't really understand and are often not met. And it's not that old men are grumpy, it's that old men are unhappy because we have needs that are not met, because we have a society that doesn't understand or have compassion for the process of aging. The reality is when we grow older, our kids a lot of times become more like our parents. And it's amazing to me how the roles reverse. I want you to think about this. Think about, this is a transition that so many of us fail at. And I think this is where conflict begins to arise. Because it's nuts to have our children place boundaries on us. I mean, that just feels strange. Okay, I like being in charge. I'm not going to lie. I like, leading and whatever. It's something that I do. It's just, that's what I do, right? And the thought of having my daughter place boundaries on me is just strange, because I place boundaries on her. I know someday, if we're blessed and fortunate, maybe some of my daughters will get married, and, if they're single, that's cool too. But if they get married and God opens their womb and they have kids, I might call up my daughter and say, hey, Izzy, I'm coming over today to see my grandchild. And she might look at me and say, hey, no, Dad, not today. I'm busy, whatever. And I'll be like, what do you mean I can't see my grandchildren today? I'm your dad, you're my daughter, I'm the parent, I'll be coming over, and I'm going to ram that door down to see my grandchildren, right? I mean, that's what I want to say. That's what I would feel like would be the right role at this point. But in the arc of life dependency, guess what? When kids become parents, their parents become kids. The roles reverse. And all of a sudden, instead of me setting boundaries on my daughter, guess what's happened? My daughter is now setting boundaries on me as a parent. And that's a natural process of life. And when we fail at this process, what happens? You get a ton of conflict in the family, right? It's a cycle of love and respect. This doesn't work right. People get frustrated. The roles reverse. And instead of parents giving to kids, kids now constantly give to parents. Not only do our physical needs reverse, but I think a lot of times our emotional needs reverse. This is the part of the talk you really want to lean into. I've got some good stuff for you right here. I want to go back to this little chart right here talking about our emotional needs. See, when we are young, okay, or when our kids are young, okay, they want love and we want respect. Kids want love, parents want respect. When our kids are young, it's just the way that it works, you know, and your kids come to you and they say, you know, play with me, love me, pay attention to me, mom watch, dad watch. I can't tell you how many times I hear that, dad watch, dad watch, right? And it's like, wow, right? Are we done here? No, you want me to watch again? I can't summon it that time, son. Like, I can't. Like, that's just so, I'm not going to affirm, you're not going to be a millennial. I'm not going to affirm garbage, okay? And when you do a backflip, then tell me to watch, right? My kids will have issues. Anyway, parents want respect, kids want love, and I think there's this crazy cycle at home. Kids want love, parents want respect. We got all these issues because this is what happens. Our kids act out because they feel unloved, right? They act a fool. And I get frustrated when my kids act a fool, so what do? Right? I feel disrespected, so I'm going to discipline them. And I'll withhold a little bit of love from them because I want to bring discipline on their life because I don't want them to act a fool. Well, then they feel unloved, right? And they want more love, so what are they going to do? They're going to act out so that they can get more love, supposedly, in their mind, and I'll feel disrespected, so what I'm going to do? I'm going to withhold love, I'm going to bring discipline and whatever, and we get in this crazy cycle because they want love, I want respect, and we're chasing each other's tails, and it's escalating, and some of you guys know exactly what I'm talking about because your house is in a crazy love and respect, crazy cycle right now. You see it. It's unfolding. It's hard. It's difficult. And that's part of our needs. Now, what's interesting is it starts off with parents wanting respect and kids wanting love, but as our kids grow older, our needs become more balanced. And in the late teenage years, this is like an eclipse. It's like a solar eclipse. That's how long it lasts. It's very short, very temporary. I call it the golden age of parenting. Maybe the last 2 years of high school, the first 2 years of college, parents and kids want love and respect about equally. And in a healthy family, not all families get this, but many families reach this place where it's like, I just enjoy my kids. You know, I mean, I love them, but I think I actually like them. Like, I like, you know, talking and stuff. Like, it's fun. I mean, we just connect, you know. And have you ever seen that phase? There's this phase where I feel like a lot of moms fall in love with their sons. Like, you just see him, like, I just love him. He's just so deep and love just connecting with him. And you're like, that's cute. And the moms are always like, and they're not, now that they're grown up, this is going to be forever. It's like, no, it won't. It won't be forever. You know, why? Because for this reason, a man shall leave his father and mother and cleave to his wife. There's another stage of life after this. It's called the consultant stage. And now the needs have totally reversed. It started off where parents wanted respect and kids wanted love. Now kids want respect and parents want love. The emotional needs have completely reversed and done a 180. And this is really interesting. Right? It used to be the kids said, play with me, pay attention to me, watch me. Now the parents say, play with me, pay attention to me, watch me. Won't you come home for Christmas? Won't you come home for Thanksgiving? Won't you spend time with me? Can't I come and see my baby, my grandbaby? Can't I come over and see it? Can't I be in the room while you give birth? I gave birth to you. It's only natural, right? No, Mom. No, absolutely not. You need to respect my life. And families get into these adult tailspins. Now, dads of sons, we'll get to you in a minute, but especially moms of adult daughters, what happens? You feel in love, so you want to force your way into your daughter's life. You force your way in there, like, I'm coming over and whatever. And daughter doesn't feel respected, so she pushes mom out, right? And then mom's like, oh, now I'm going crazy, right? So she's calling all the sisters and the sons-in-laws, and things are going nuts, and she's manipulating and crying and all this stuff to get her way, right? And daughter's like, get out of my life, Mom, you know? And it just keeps escalating. And then at Thanksgiving, you know, everybody's fighting and food fighting, and all the guys are like, let's go out in the garage and hang out for a little bit while they work this out, right? And then you come back in from the garage, and it's all our fault now all of a sudden, right? I mean, that's just what happens. How did that happen? I mean, you guys were fighting with each other, but now it's our fault. Anyway, it escalates, right? It's a crazy cycle, love and respect, until daughter cuts mom off, right? Now you have estrangement because of this love and respect crazy cycle, because the needs reversed. We didn't understand how that worked. I want you to take a moment to think about your relationships with your parents, adult kids, relationships in your life. Are any of you guys, could you be in a love and respect crazy cycle? So often we get angry as our parents, as adults, because they seem so pushy, but hopefully you can relate to this. And I want you to hear this. someday you will be in their shoes. A lot of times we don't think about this. I mean, someday you will be a consultant. Someday you will have adult kids who are pushing you out of their life. And I'll just tell you, Jesus says this, and this is a principle you can take to the bank every time. What you sow is what you reap. You treat others the way you want to be treated. And I want you to open your eyes to your older parents right now and really think about, man, what example am I setting for my kids? How am I loving these people in my life? Parents and grandparents in the room. I would tell you, it's really easy to forget how hard it is to raise young kids. Old people in the room, it's like you guys have amnesia. You know, you tell me things. I bring my babies into the church, and you're like, enjoy it. It goes so fast. I hate that phrase because it's like, I've had babies for 7 years, and fast is not the word that I would use to describe how I feel about raising my kids. In fact, I would say, like, turtle slow. Like, this is real slow. I've been changing a lot of diapers, right? Enjoy it. It goes so fast. I'm like, what's to enjoy? No, just kidding. I love parts, small parts of it. I bring a newborn into church. I got lots of newborns. I've had 4 of them. And I bring them into church, and everybody said, this is the phrase, do you enjoy your bundle of joy? And I'm like, that is the worst description of what bundle of joy. You mean bundle of inconvenience and lack of sleep and extreme difficulty? Like bundle of tears and pain, like my tears and my pain? I mean, this is hard, okay? You don't understand, right? I mean, and it's like you have amnesia. It's like this traumatic experience that you forget about, and it's like you're blocking. It's a block. It's easy to forget how pressed for time you were when you had little kids, and 2018 isn't any easier. I want you to know it's not that your kid doesn't love you. They do, but they need respect from you right now. For this reason, a man shall leave his father and mother and cleave to his wife. I think it's a big part of what's happening with David and Absalom in their story. They have this huge wound in their life because of a severe tragedy. I mean, it's a big deal what's happened in their life. They're struggling. And David wants love from Absalom. And Absalom feels deeply disrespected because of his dad's inaction around the whole issue. I mean, his dad hasn't taken action. It's a big deal. And ultimately, there's this big blow up in their family that I won't describe. You can read it in the Bible. They have this big, huge fight. It's dramatic. It's horrible. It's terrible. Okay? And Absalom ends up moving out to Geshur. He just says, I'm out of here. I'm not talking to you. And he moves away to this different town called Geshur. David stays in Jerusalem. And they don't talk for 2 years. Okay? It's a big, huge deal. It's a big falling out. And they stop talking. 2 Samuel 14:1, David's general, Joab, realizes how much the king longed to see Absalom. David sees, oh man, this dad, he just loves his son. He feels unloved. He feels rejected. So what he does is he goes out to Geshur. He goes to Absalom, and he says, hey, dude, you need to come home. Your dad loves you. He misses you. And Absalom's like, well, I'll come home, but don't you think I'm going to come to my dad? Okay, you go tell him that if he wants me to come home, he got to come see me and kiss my shoes, right? And Joab's like, no problem. I'll go to your dad. He'll come kiss your shoes. It's going to be fine. And Absalom's like, that's right, because I'm not going to humble myself. His dad needs to pursue him. And what's funny is he ends up spending another 2 years waiting for his dad to come to him, and he doesn't. They both just ignore each other. They're living in the same town, and this is funny. I've seen this. How many times have you seen this with families? You live in the same town, but you don't see each other because of this pain, right? They live in the same town. It was a love and respect crazy cycle. David felt unloved and unpursued. Absalom felt rejected and disrespected. And Joab is supposed to go and get dad and have him come see son, but Joab doesn't do it, so Absalom gets a little ticked. Check out what Absalom does. It says, then Joab came to Absalom at his house and demanded, why did your servant set my field on fire? That's a great way to ring someone's doorbell, right? Absalom's a little bit ticked off, so he's like, I want you to go set Joab's fields on fire. And then he's like, because I wanted you to ask the king why he brought me back from Geshur. If he didn't intend to see me, I might as well have stayed there. Let me see the king. If he finds me guilty of anything, then let him kill me. Notice the description here. I mean, there's so much bitterness and hurt in this statement. Absalom doesn't miss his dad or his father. He doesn't feel unloved. He feels disrespected. Notice what he calls his father. He calls him the king. You tell that man. He's no father of mine. He may have been a sperm donor, but that's it. You tell that man, ain't my dad. He's dead to me as far as I'm concerned, unless he wants to come and tell me that he respects me. And notice what he's asking for right here. If he finds me guilty of anything, then let him kill me. He wants his dad to vindicate his life choices. Fathers in the room, this is what your sons want. They want respect. They want you to look at them and say, I am proud of the choices that you made with your life. Vindicate my life choices. Show some respect. Okay? Tell me that you like the woman I married. You tell me that you respect me. This is what sons want from their fathers, right? Don't make fun of me. Don't be sarcastic. Tell me you respect me. They have a meeting, and it's just classic guy stuff, right? They work so hard. Joab finally gets them to meet. You know what? It's just like, have you ever had two guys, they're fighting. They finally get together to meet, and they don't talk about anything? It's like, hey, dude, what's up? Not much. Haven't talked for 4 years. How's your trail cam? It's good. Saw a couple buck. It's nice. Killed one. Cool. See you later. Everybody's like, you have got to be kidding me. The 4 years you haven't talked, and you talk about trail cam for 2 hours and leave? You're kidding me, right? They don't talk about feelings, though, because they're dudes. It's crazy. So they get together. They live in Jerusalem. They begin talking. They go to family events, but they don't talk. It's just clink, clink, clink every time they get together for 4 years. It says, after 4 years, Absalom said to the king, let me go back to Hebron to offer a sacrifice to the Lord and fulfill a vow I made to him. Hebron was Absalom's hometown. This is where he was born and raised. He was raised in Hebron. He's like, Dad, forget this. Like, I've been living here long enough. We got nothing. I'm just going home. Can you imagine this? 4 years of not communicating what's really bothering you. They're just cold with each other, snapping at each other, surfacey with each other. 4 years of assuming you don't care about me, you don't love me, you don't respect me. It's a crazy cycle going around and around. I wonder how many of you right now are in a crazy cycle with your parents and your family. For years, you've just been snapping at each other like David and Absalom. It's been years since you've actually had a heart-to-heart or connected on any deep level. It's been years since you've actually had a positive relational connection. It's a crazy cycle, and you're in it right now. Parents in the room, it's your job to break it. God has given you a mantle of leadership with your children, and I would challenge you to consider breaking it. We lead by example. Leaders sacrifice. Leaders lay down their life. I want to challenge you to consider breaking it. You just be honest. That's how you break it. You tell your kids, hey, I feel unloved and rejected, and I know I can't demand love and time from you, and I understand and respect your boundaries. I see how busy you are and how hard you're working, but can you tell me in the midst of that? And I don't need time. I just need you to tell me. Will you tell me that you love me? Right? Just be honest about your need instead of like getting mad and passive-aggressive and manipulating. That's a word. I just made it up. Adult kids, be honest with your parents. Lead the way. Lead by example. It's your job to break the cycle. God has now given you a mantle of leadership. As your parents age, they become like your kids. It's your job to set the example as well. You tell your parents, I feel disrespected by your refusal to respect my boundaries. Here's a time that I can give you, and if you want more, you need to be nice. It's so funny, because when we're parents and our kids are young, what do? We tell them, you get what you get, and you don't throw a... Right, we do that, right? And then also another one in my house, this is a big one, okay? We say, no means... Yeah, sometimes Kristen tells me that one too, but anyway, it's cool, okay? This is what we do with our kids. And what happens if they like mess with those boundaries? They get less of the good thing that they want. You know what's funny to me is then our kids grow up, and all of a sudden they're telling to us, hey, I'm going to give you what I can give you. I can't give you more time. You get what you get, and you don't throw a fit, okay? And then you say, well, I want more time, and I want this, and I want that. And what do you say to your parents? Mom, no means no. And then your parents continue to rebel, and you continue to say, oh, I want, you're manipulating, you're talking with people. And what happens? What happens? You get less of what you want. It's the natural process, because as we grow older, I know it's strange to have our kids set boundaries on us, but this is the natural way that things work. And I tell you what, parents, if you want more time with your adult kids, honey gets a lot more flies than vinegar. Honey gets a lot more flies than vinegar. It's a lot easier to be kind and nice than to be mean and abrasive and throw a temper tantrum, right? There's just so many complications that develop as we grow old. And I think a lot of times, parents lose perspective of what it was like to have older parents in their life. And I think a lot of times, kids have an inability to have compassion and empathy for the pain and struggle that their parents are going through. I think a lot of times we lose perspective on the past. This story is just so ridiculous to me, Absalom and David. It's a crazy cycle. I mean, David could have just gone to his son. Absalom could have just gone to his dad. But like middle school baby boys, they're communicating through Joab, through friends and notes. Joab, you go and tell my dad, right? The king says, Joab, you go and tell my son. Are you serious right now? You guys are grown men and you're communicating through this dude? Like, stop it. You live in the same town. Go and tell each other to each other's face. But for 4 years, they're going back and forth in this little fight. David and Absalom have been dealing with this for a long time. I think one of the big issues right now is David doesn't understand that his son is a grown man who is reevaluating a lot of his dad's choices. And this is a process that we naturally go through. I call it re-adjudication of parents' choices. Reevaluating, rejudging, re-adjudicating, reopening, re-looking at. See, when you grow older, a lot of times you look at a lot of the choices that your parents made. And when you were a kid, it was just normal. Yeah, well, they did that. That's normal, whatever. But when you're an adult, you're kind of reevaluating. Was that normal? Was that okay? See, Absalom, when Tamar had her issue, when she was attacked in their household, Absalom just was like, okay, well, I mean, Dad's going to deal with it the way he's going to deal with it. But now that he's a young man, it's fresh in his mind. It happened in the formative years of his life, and he's re-adjudicating. He's reevaluating his dad's decision to ignore the situation. Dad, she was our sister. How could you do nothing? You are the king. You coward. How could you do nothing? She was attacked in her own household by a relative who spurned her. What's wrong with you, Dad? How could you just let it go? And David's like, dude, how dare you? You have no idea how much that hurt me. You have no idea what I did to hold this family and this kingdom together. I did what I did and I can't change it now. What do you want from me? Why can't you love me? Why can't you see that I did the best I could? Can't we move on from it? They're stuck in this love and respect crazy cycle for years. They just can't get out of it. They can't break out of it. And here's what they're going through right here. There's one more aspect to the love and respect crazy cycle I want you to see, okay? When you grow up, the choices of parents are readjudicated. They're rejudged. They're reopened. And for better or for worse, this is just something that we naturally do. It's amazing to me how much more I see about things that I heard as a kid, memories that I have, whatever. I had a neighbor who had a daughter who had red hair, and he didn't, have red hair, and neither did his wife. People would say, hey, where did your daughter get her red hair? And he would always say, from the milkman. And as a kid, I thought, wow, sweet, the milkman has milk that could change the color of your hair. I would like some of that milk. I would like to change the color of my hair. Do they have milk that can make your hair blue? I would enjoy that, right? I mean, I just thought it was really cool that the milkman had that power. Anyway, one day, I was sitting in college, the finest education institution on earth, Wheaton College in Wheaton, Illinois, right? And I was sitting there in the cafeteria, and all of a sudden, I was like, oh, I was just going through memory. Oh, he was implying that his wife had an extramarital affair with the milkman, and that the milkman, in fact, sired this daughter, and she may not even be his. Wow, that's I just got it, it just all came together, whatever. You see, here's the thing. Kristen, too, remembers coming home and seeing things that seemed normal at the time that were not normal. Kristen, her oldest sister, is mentally and physically handicapped. And as a kid, she just always thought everybody has a mentally and physically handicapped older sister. I mean, that's just normal. That's what you do. Everybody has one of these people at home that, we take care of and clothe and change and feed, and that's just a normal part of childhood. And as an adult, she's begun to see, wow, this is not normal. This is different. And, there are a lot of things that Tara brought into their life that were wonderful, that made their life much better. But there were also a lot of things that were very difficult. And it's age brings a different perspective into it. There's a lot of addiction in Kristen's household. And as a kid, it just seemed normal. It seemed like a normal part of her life. But as an adult, we see, oh, this is a little bit different than we thought it was. This is not normal. We don't try to reopen things from long ago. It's just that age and maturity bring a different perspective to parts of our childhood. And it's interesting now because as an adult, sometimes we wonder, why didn't they get help? Sometimes we think that was not okay. I mean, that seemed okay at the time, but as an adult, that was just not okay. That was wrong. This isn't my family, but for some of you guys, hypothetically, you might think, I can't believe she was cheating on him for so long. I can't believe the way he used to yell at her. I can't believe the way he used to hit us. What a jerk he was for getting so angry. I can't believe she poisoned my perspective on my own father. How could she just tell me all the time? How could she not summon more joy to be my mom? How could she allow her boyfriends into our house and victimize us? Years later, what's normal and okay, we realize from the perspective of adulthood that it was not okay. Parents, if you have young kids today, this should be an eye-opening conversation. Because a lot of times we look at our little kids and we think they're just kids. It's fine. I can do what I want. But someday they won't be kids. They will be adults. And they will readjudicate our decisions from the perspective of adulthood. This is eye-opening. I know you might think, well, I just can't even. I'm tired. It's noon. I'm going to pour a big glass of wine and put on SpongeBob SquarePants and tune out. And my husband won't know, and my kids will be none the wiser. But guess what? Someday, those choices will be readjudicated by adults who are sitting in the room right now with you. That's something we don't think about. It should change the way we parent. I think what happens is that all these issues from childhood that a parent thought were resolved are slowly dumped back on the table of relationship and conversation as the child goes through years of these memories. With a different and new perspective. They're being readjudicated. And for a kid, they feel disrespected by a lot of these choices. And for a parent, of course, they feel like it's unfair and unloving. How dare you? Because usually the kids don't know the whole story. You don't know why I made that choice. You have no idea what I did for you. You have no idea what I did to hold this family together. You have no idea how hard I worked, the things I went through, the stuff I did to provide for you. And now you're going to bring it up. You don't even remember the sacrifice. This stuff is from 20 years ago, and you're going to seriously bring this up right now? When a kid brings it up, the parents get angry. How could you be so unloving and ungrateful? How could you be so brash and disrespectful? It's the crazy cycle. It goes around and around and around, and you have to break this cycle. Parents in the room, this is a way that you can serve your adult kids. Leaders lead by example. If your relationship is strained with your adult children, I would guess that there's probably something blocking it. And I'm betting your adult child has probably readjudicated some choices that you made. And they're sitting on it, and they're holding on to it, feeling disrespected and resentful. So after all, your adult child's probably a millennial, and of course they would, right? Just kidding. Listen, parents, you can break the crazy cycle by going to your kids, humbling yourself, and showing respect. And I know that this sounds like, well, I don't want to do that. I don't want to eat like a cat poop sandwich. Like, that sounds terrible. Why would you make me? How could you cause me? How could you ask me? I mean, no. This will give your kids the respect they need, and it will open the door to you receiving the love that you so desperately want. I would challenge you to look at your kids and you say, I love you, and I know I wasn't a perfect parent. Is there anything that you need more insight into about decisions I made for you as a kid? Or is there anything that I can apologize to you for? Now, don't do this unless you have really prepared yourself to not get defensive. Because if you go and do this and you expect them to blow rainbows and butterflies in your direction, it may not go that way. You need to be fully prepared for, Hoover Dam to just bust open and have them tell you some things. And what you do, this is what you do. You just listen and you don't get defensive. And you say, I'm defined by Jesus in me. I'm not defined by their assessment of my parenting. I'm defined by Jesus in me. You listen to that. You listen to them. Don't explain yourself. Do not attack. Don't try to say, well, you don't understand. Here's why. No. You just listen. You answer questions. You listen. And then when they're done, you say, I am so sorry for the way that my decisions and actions or inaction has hurt you. Will you forgive me, please? And if they forgive you, then you look at them and you say, is there anything that I can do now to lessen the pain of what I did or didn't do back then, right? This is such a big deal, and I want you to know it's hard, but this will open the door to receiving what you really want. For a lot of us, we're like, I could never do that, but I promise you, there's value and worth in it. Now, kids in the room, don't think that you're getting off the hook. A lot of you guys are like, I got to text my mom to watch this message. This is fantastic. This is great. I love this. No. You don't get off the hook either, because you also have the power to break the crazy cycle. Regardless of whether or not your parents do, you have the power to break the crazy cycle as well. And here's what I would do. I would forgive, have empathy, and compassion. Doesn't matter who's right. I think a lot of us are in here today and you're like, but you don't know how terrible my parents are and blah, blah, blah. And look, I don't. I know that your parents could be terrible. I was fortunate enough to have really good parents. But I don't care who is right. I want you to hear this principle. Almost every parent has done the best they could with what they had. I think there are very few parents who woke up saying, I want to be a deadbeat this morning. No. They did the best they could with what they had, in spite of the addiction, in spite of the laziness, in spite of the depression, in spite of the lack of self-discipline, in spite of the lack of good decision-making skills. I believe that almost every parent says, I'm going to do the very best I can with whatever it is God has given me. And it might not have been very good. It might have been really bad, but I always try to remind myself of that. And you have two choices. You either lovingly confront them about it and then let it go no matter the result. Even if they don't respond well, you still have to let it go. Or if you don't want to confront them about it, then you need to give it to Jesus and let it go. You need to say hard things like, Jesus, would you give me the strength to forgive my mom? And then you say, Jesus, I choose to forgive my mom. I choose to forgive my dad for yelling at me and my mother. I choose to forgive my mom for poisoning my opinion of my father as a child. I choose to forgive my parents for destroying our family by making selfish decisions and cheating on each other. I choose to forgive my mom for bringing boys into the house. I choose to forgive. And look, I'm not saying it's easy, but I do believe that it's worth it, because forgiveness is your portal to freedom. I think so many people don't realize, your unforgiveness hurts you more than anybody else by a country mile. I know some of you, your parents are long dead, and you still hold unforgiveness towards them. It's like, that's only hurting you. That's literally, they're gone. They're gone. Why are you poisoning your life? Forgiveness is your portal to freedom. You understand, unforgiveness is what would destroy Absalom's life. He would die because of it. It would nearly destroy his entire kingdom and family. I want you to see what Jesus has to say about unforgiveness. He says, if you forgive those who sin against you, your heavenly Father will forgive you. But if you refuse to forgive others, your Father will not forgive your sins. That's a big statement. I want to challenge you to consider forgiveness. You see, Jesus says that forgiveness is the mark of a Christian. What he's saying right here is forgiveness is what happens when you receive forgiveness from God the Father. It's like a sign and seal of God's presence in your life. There are a lot of you here who would say, well, I could never become a Christian because I could never forgive. I understand that, but I want you to hear this. Forgiveness is something that God empowers you to do when you become a Christian. So if you're sitting there right now saying, well, I can't follow Jesus because I can't forgive. No. I would tell you, you need to follow Jesus because you can't forgive. His Spirit will empower you to do it. That is the presence and power of God in your life. The Bible tells us when you've been forgiven, you are able to forgive. The story of Scripture is a story of God the Father being reconciled to His children. And I think there's no more beautiful way to play out the gospel in our own lives than reconciling ourselves to our children and parents. I want you to understand, when you hold on to unforgiveness, you are diminishing the power and presence of God in your life, and you're diminishing your own joy. There's some of you here today, you're like, well, this message is for me. I've got a strained relationship with my parents. I've got a strained relationship with my kids. Maybe you got kids who are outside of God's plan for your life. Got prodigals. My parents aren't following Jesus, whatever it is. Listen, instead of getting frustrated, I want you to choose to forgive, and I want you to get persuasive. I think so often what we do is we just get frustrated. Well, you need to get into church more. You need to blah, blah, blah. It's all, no. I want you to sit down and think, this is what I want. What can we do to cause this to happen? If you have a kid who, from whatever reason, has become a prodigal, I want you to ask yourself, and maybe them too, are there actions that I have taken that have driven you away from the family or driven you away from the kingdom of God? I want you to ask yourself, what would work best to open up their hearts again to a relationship with me and a relationship with God? See, I feel like instead of doing this, David looked at his son Absalom, and he just ruminated in his hurt. And rather than pursuing his son like a good father should and could, he didn't. I feel like Absalom, rather than pursuing his father, rather than persuading his father for reconciliation, what did he do? He just sat there and ruminated about how unfair and how evil and how painful his father was. Listen, pursue reconciliation, right? He could have stopped the most horrendous thing that would happen to David's reign. Absalom would lose his life. He would lose his life. He would end up starting a civil war in the nation of Israel and usurp his father. Ultimately, his father would have this big come-from-behind victory, but one of David's generals would end up killing Absalom. And David finds out about it in 2 Samuel 18:33, and what I consider is the saddest verse in the entire Old Testament of the Bible. I want to read this to you. It says, the king was overcome with emotion, and he went up to the room over the gateway, and he burst into tears. And as he went, he cried, "Oh, my son Absalom, my son, my son. Absalom, if only I had died instead of you. Absalom, my son, my son." I just know that there's a lot of families who are straining under broken or estranged or painful relationships. And I know that there's a lot of people who've endured a lot of different things. But I believe the heart of God is reconciliation in broken relationships. I mean, he models that for us in the Bible. We model that in our lives. That's the gospel of God in our lives. I know some of you have endured incredible pain. All relationships will end in death, one way or the other. Maybe we will bury our fathers, or maybe a father in this case buried his son. It all ends in death, but I don't want you to let your pain and unforgiveness go to the grave. As we end this series, as we leave the Parent Trap, look, I hope I've equipped you with a lot of skills. We've looked at Scripture. God has a lot to say about parenting, but more than anything else, I hope this series would bring reconciliation to broken relationships. I hope some people in this room would say, you know what, God, you have forgiven me, and so I can forgive this person who has hurt me so much. I hope that some people here would say, you know what, I'm going to respond to God's call in my life. And even though it's not fair, Jesus dying for me wasn't fair either. So I can forgive. With heads bowed and eyes closed, just in a moment of privacy and concentration, out of respect for your neighbor, I really want you to think about your own life. And I know there's some of you here today. You can immediately see this message was made, custom made by God for you. We're coming into this Thanksgiving series and season, and I don't want another day to go by with broken relationships in our families. You don't know how long you have. I'm just asking you today to consider pursuing peace and forgiveness with people in your house. If God's calling you to do that, would you just lift up your hand and say, Pastor, will you pray for me? I see that hand. I see that hand. I see you. I see you. I'm so proud of you guys. Yeah. Let me just pray for you guys with your hands up. Jesus, I just lift up people pursuing reconciliation today. I thank you for their boldness and courage. I ask that you would equip them with skills and opportunity. I ask that you would open up their family member's heart to forgiveness and freedom. I ask that in the name of Jesus, you would take broken things and bring beauty out of them. And I ask that we could see great things rise from the rubble of broken relationships today. With heads still bowed and eyes still closed, there's others of you would say, John, I wanted to raise my hand for that, but I'm just so angry I can't forgive. I don't even want to forgive. I understand how that feels. And I know that God understands your heart completely. I would tell you that inability to forgive is usually because we have not submitted to Jesus as our commander in that area of our life. We said, Jesus, you can have everything except for this area. There are some of you here today, you need to commit that pain to Jesus and say, Jesus, I don't want to forgive right now, but I'm giving you my hurt, and I'm asking you to equip me with the power to do that. If that's you, would you put up your hand and say, yeah, that's me. I see that hand. I'm so proud of you. I see you back there. I see you back there. Let me just pray for you guys. Jesus, I just pray for people right now. We just confess our sin of rebellion against your love. We confess our sin of holding on to unforgiveness and bitterness. We ask that by the power of your Spirit, you would equip us with love, compassion, empathy, and the power to forgive people who have hurt us deeply. Jesus, I ask that you would restore broken hearts. I thank you for what you did for us on the cross and the model that you set for us. And right now, Jesus, equip us with what we need by your Spirit to pass it on to others. In Jesus' name, all God's people said amen and amen. Can we give people who just took a step today a round of applause? I'm proud of you guys. I want to ask our church to stand. The band is going to lead us in one more really great song. I want you to sing this with us.